Good morning. I'm Dan O'Shea. I'm the Chief of Police, City of Rockford. To my right is the Mayor of City of Rockford, Thomas McNamara. To my immediate left is the Sheriff of Winnebago County, Gary Caruana, and to his left is the State's Attorney of Winnebago County, Jay Hanley. Last night at approximately 6:55 p.m., 911 Center received phone calls of shots being fired inside the Don Carter lanes at 4007 East State Street in Rockford. Officers were immediately dispatched and arrived on scene within approximately 1 minute of the first calls and dispatch. Upon arrival, officers heard gunfire from inside the building. Those officers immediately entered the building in an attempt to locate and apprehend the offender. Within several minutes, the officers were able to locate what they believed was a suspect, and he was taken into custody without any officers firing their weapons. The suspect had attempted to obscure his identification and hide his weapons prior to the officers taking him into custody. Most of the incident was captured on surveillance video from inside the business. There's 6 victims from last night. 3 are deceased, 3 are wounded. The deceased are a 73-year-old male, a 65-year-old male, and a 69-year-old male. The identities of those victims will be provided by the coroner's office when appropriate. Wounded by the shooting was a 14-year-old male who was shot in the face. He was subsequently airlifted to Madison and is in current stable condition. A 16-year-old female was shot in the shoulder and has been treated and released from a local hospital. A 62-year-old male received multiple gunshot wounds, and the last update we have from the hospital is he was in surgery overnight and in critical condition. The suspect that was taken into custody has been identified as 37-year-old Duke Webb. Mr. Webb is a resident of the state of Florida. He is a current active military member, and we are in contact with the U.S. Army regarding his military status. Charges for Mr. Webb will be announced by State's Attorney Jay Hanley momentarily. I want to thank all the agencies that have helped us and responded, not only the city agencies, the City Fire Department, and the 911 dispatchers, but the Winnebago County Sheriff's Office, Loves Park Police Department, Durand Police Department, the Roscoe Police Department, the Illinois State Police, the FBI, the ATF, and the Rockford Park District Police Department. The last thing I'll talk about, there was questions about why a business was open during current mitigation efforts in the state of Illinois. The business downstairs, which is a bowling alley and separate bar, was all closed. The upstairs bar facility was within compliance of the mitigation efforts. It's a double garage door open type business where they can operate and have limited numbers of people. So the mitigation, the business was within compliance. At this time, I'll ask State's Attorney Jay Hanley to come up and talk about the charges against Mr. Webb.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning. There are 6 charges against Duke Webb. Before I list those charges, understand that these are merely allegations and that Duke Webb is presumed innocent until proven guilty or not guilty at trial. So the Chief mentioned that there were 3 deceased, and thus there are 3 counts of murder against Mr. Webb. Just so for your sake, those are Class M, and the statutory cite is 720 ILCS 5/9-1 sub A1. Chief O'Shea mentioned that there were 3 other victims who were wounded. Duke Webb will be charged with attempted first-degree murder. That is a Class X felony, and the statutory cite 720 ILCS 5/8-4 and 5/9-1 sub A1. Remember, those are merely allegations, and I think the Chief will eventually mention, and I would echo, that this is an ongoing investigation, and thus you will get more information as it comes out and as it's finalized. But for now, those are the charges. Again, 3 murder charges and 3 attempted murder charges. Thank you.
Good morning. So the incident last night at Don Carter Lanes is certainly a horrific incident. This morning, we have 3 families who are mourning the loss of their loved ones, and we have 3 additional families who are praying that their loved ones live throughout these really horrific injuries. Among those, a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old. My thoughts and prayers are with them. My heart is with their families during this most difficult time. This is obviously not the way any of these families or any of us want to be celebrating a holiday weekend. I want to thank Chief Dan O'Shea and Sheriff Gary Caruana, as well as all the agencies who helped respond and provided us assistance during last night's difficult incident. I want to thank our fire department and our 911 telecommunicators who took those very first troubling phone calls. Our officers quickly and without hesitation entered the building to protect lives and apprehend the suspect. And this morning, our detectives continue their difficult work investigating the scene and determining exactly all that transpired. We owe these brave men and women a debt of gratitude. Don Carter's. Just want to spend a second talking about Don Carter Lanes. It's been a staple in our community for decades. When you think of Don Carter's, you think about families and friends coming together during good times. You think of the tournaments that they've hosted, the birthday parties that they've hosted, the charity fundraisers that they do for so many local nonprofits. I myself have attended so many nonprofit fundraisers as well as birthday parties for nephews at this establishment. Don Carter's even hosts a Miracle Mile business organizations and neighborhood meetings right there at their establishment. This is obviously an incredibly difficult time for their family and for all of their employees. We as Rockfordians owe them our support during this tough time. As we come to the end of this most difficult year and we look ahead at this new year upon us, we know that this type of violence needs to stop. This type of violence in the city of Rockford needs to stop. This type of violence throughout our country needs to stop. And today, with the eyes of the country on us, we need to show, as Rockfordians, how we respond to an incident such as this, as one Rockford, supporting one another and coming together. We as Rockfordians are at our best during the most difficult of times, and I know this one will be no exception. And with that, I'll bring up Chief O'Shea to answer questions.
I'll follow up with the mayor. Obviously, our hearts go out to the family members of all 6 victims in this tragedy. I want to end my comments with, I cannot thank the men and women from law enforcement who made this tragedy a lot less than it could have been with their fast and professional and brave response. I'll take any questions. Keep in mind that it's an ongoing investigation, and there will be things that we just can't answer.
We were told that somebody had actually jumped off the balcony, and there's kind of mixed reports coming out of what happened to that person. Is that one of the survivors? Somebody like jumped off the balcony.
So as far as specifics about the actual incident, we can't go into because it's ongoing, and there could be more facts that will come out later, but those will have to come from the court, from the state's attorney's office.
Are all the victims shooting victims?
Yes.
Okay.
All the victims, all the deceased victims and the 3 injured all received gunfire.
And are any of the victims related to each other? I know the mayor said this is a family business.
So we don't believe any of the victims are related to each other, but they could be, but we're not sure at this point.
Did the suspect know the victims at all?
We believe this is a completely random act, and there is no prior meeting or any kind of relationship between the suspect and any of the victims in this case.
You mentioned that the suspect tried to disguise himself as someone who was in the crowd like everyone else. How many more people were inside this establishment beyond the 6 who were shot? And can you speak to how your officers were able to determine that he was in fact the suspect?
So we believe there's probably about 20 to 25 people total in the business or the building prior to the incident. I can't go into specifics how the officers identified him and took him into custody. That'll have to come out during the court hearings.
And that 25, that crowd dissipated as shots rang out, I take it?
Sure. Obviously any active shooting scene, there are people are going to flee and do whatever they're doing. This is no different than any other shooting situation. So people were able to get out of the building some were able to hide while all the shooting was going on.
Why did the
What kind of
gunman
weapon was
stop
recovered?
shooting? Was it because police were on scene?
I can't go into that, and I can't go into motive either.
What kind of weapon was recovered at the scene? And you mentioned this man is active duty military.
Mhm.
Is this a service weapon?
Two weapons were recovered. They're handguns. That's the most I can give you at this point.
Two of the victims were minors. Was this just a bar, or was this a place that they were able to get food? And if it was a bar, what about the parents?
So the two teenage victims were there picking up food. It's a carry-out establishment as well. They were not in the bar area with anyone.
Do you know why he was in Rockford?
Don't have all the facts. Again, ongoing investigation.
Question for the state's attorney. I don't know if it's too early to know about this, but in terms of logistics, is this something that will be prosecuted here locally, or is there a chance this man could be taken by the military for a court martial?
So I would anticipate and would be assured that this would be prosecuted here in Winnebago County.
For both the chief and the mayor, you guys have just mentioned that this is now the deadliest year here in Rockford. What sentiments do you have for the public that have gone through a lot this year?
Obviously, the shootings have gone up this year in the city. This is a huge tragedy, and we'll deal with this tragedy and deal with the families from the victims in this tragedy. As far as statistics and end of year, we can talk about that at a different time. Obviously, we are very concerned about violent crime in the city. I'll leave it at that.
You mentioned that your officers did not need to fire their weapons. Could you speak to how much worse this could have been? Was he armed with, I know you said the two handguns, but did he have more ammo? Was he out of ammo? Are people lucky to have not been shot beyond those six?
Sure. I'm not going to speculate as to what could have happened. Obviously, we don't know. But I will say that I am very confident that the officers being there on scene in the building, trying to mitigate the situation immediately, certainly stopped further violence from occurring.
When you say he tried to disguise himself, can you kind of explain what you mean? Just there's no.
I can't really go beyond that. That's more to the people who have inquired why it took us so long to say that we had the suspect. You know, during those incidents, there's a lot going on, and while we think initially we may have the right person, we always have to be sure. We always have to make sure that there's not more than one suspect. So that was more of a why it took us a little bit, but we had him in custody in short order.
Following up on one suspect there's been some concerns about a multiple shooter incident here. Is that something that the Rockford Police Department believe to be true at all?
No, we believe the one suspect who did all the shooting is in custody, along with the weapons.
And just for clarification,
You know, approximately 20, 25, but the investigators are still reaching out and contacting
Is
everybody.
that how many people you had to clear out to, like, check for weapons, or is that how many people you think were there when the incident first started?
That's what we believe when the incident first started.
So how many people were there when officers were on scene?
I couldn't answer that.
and just for clarification, were any of the victims related to each other, not just the gunman?
I couldn't answer that right now. So, all right.
One last question. You
Sure.
mentioned bullets inside and out. You just talked about, or are we talking about shots being fired outside or bullets flying from outside, or from inside to outside since it was an open patio?
We heard from Taco Bell around the area too, that it was in the surrounding area.
Right. So right now, we believe the suspect was discharging his firearm both inside and outside the building, but that will all come out in the investigation at the end.
And victims were hit inside the building.
Correct.
You said there is surveillance video, can you say just how much you got of it?
The investigators have the surveillance videos, and they'll go through those. I can't say how much or where.
Did the suspect drive a car there? Is it still in the parking lot, or is it recovered?
I can't go through any of that with the investigation.
There was also supposedly some cell phone video that was recorded. Was that from patrons that were there? You guys have that recovered as well?
I can't speak about specifics of the investigation.
And then where did the 911 call come from? Did it come from the bar, or did it come from patrons?
The 911 call, there were multiple 911 calls, and from the place, from some of the people inside as well as other people.
Can you speak a little bit more about what the suspect, the demeanor before this started? Did he come in and start shooting? Was he in there hanging out?
No, I couldn't speak anything about the suspect, motive, intent, any of that stuff. So, thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate it.